Hi guys, welcome back from the ad break. I hope you are refreshed. Now, I want you to pay close attention to almost everything that we're going to do now. Take down notes. Make sure that you ask questions on your notes there that you will go back and research about if you don't understand some things, because that's how, after all, you practice anything, right? If you don't understand a certain note, just make a question mark and then go consult your textbooks, Google, everything that has information that you can find under mathematics. But for now, I want us to look at some principles that are involved in solving linear equations. And those principles is what you call the additive inverse, number one, the multiplicative inverse, number two, and lastly, what you call a reciprocal. I know that some of them, you've done them at lower grades when you are doing your mathematics. Now, when you talk about an additive inverse, or rather additive inverses, these are two numbers that add up to 0. So if I want an additive inverse of 3, it means that is minus 3. If I want an additive inverse of minus 3, that is plus 3. I want an additive inverse of x, that is minus x, because I must always get 0 as my final answer, right? That's what adds up to 0 means. The numbers, these additive inverses are numbers with the same size or a term with the same size, but the most important thing is the signs must be opposite. It can't have the same signs as well. One must be plus, one must be minus at all times. After all, additive inverse has to do with plus and minus only. So when two additive inverses appear in the same equation, the sum is always going to be 0. Because remember, I just said additive inverse is about plus and minus, and it must be numbers that always add up to 0. So if you see both of them in one question or one equation, the answer must definitely be 0. Now, let's just look at an example of what this means, right? If you look at the 3x and negative 3x, you can already see that these will subtract each other and give us 0. Similarly with the 2 there and the negative 2 there, they will subtract each other and give us 0. So you remember associative property, if you group them in any way, it still gives us the same thing. So this will be the same as 3x minus 3x plus 2 minus 2. 3x minus 3x will be 0. 2 minus 2, will also be 0. So my answer will just be 0, right? So you can see at all times when you have two additive inverses that appear in a certain question, then it will definitely give you 0 as your answer. We also have what we call the multiplicative inverse, right? The multiplicative inverse has to do with multiply and divide, right? Multiplication and division. So this is the multiplicative of a number is the second number that gives the answer to be equal to 1 when these two numbers are multiplied together. So if I have a, whatever that I multiply a with, I must always get 1 for it to qualify to be called a multiplicative inverse. So you know this will be the same as 1 over a, and that will give me 1. But I'll show you exactly what this means. Now, a typical example will be me having the question as just the 3 over 4x. That's my question, right? And I want to show you what the multiplicative inverse of this will be. It will then be the 4x over 3. Why? Because the 3 and the 3 will divide, the 4x and the 4x will divide, and this will give me an answer of 1, as the instruction said. Or some people prefer multiplying the numerator with the numerator, which will give me 12x over the denominator with the denominator. It will also give me 12x, and then my final answer will be 1. So at all times, you must get 1 as your final answer. And I will give this additive inverse, a multiplicative inverse of mine, a name at a later stage, just so that when we are saying these words, you're then familiar with the concepts that you are going to use. And the name that I'm just talking about is what we call a reciprocal. So the reciprocal will always be written as 1 over the number. So to get a reciprocal of a number, we divide 1 by that number. So going back to the question that I just did now, I said the multiplicative inverse is 4x over 3. Let me show you how we got that. So my number is 3 over 4x, right? And I said for you to get the reciprocal, you must divide this by 1. Or you must say 1 divided by the number I mean. So it will be 1 over 3 over 4x. And then you know this is the same as 1 divided by 3 over 4x, which is the same as 1 multiplied by 4x over 3. That's where the 4x over 3 comes from. So we call this the reciprocal. So it's either a reciprocal or a multiplicative inverse. They both mean one thing. So let's look at the steps that I want you to follow when solving linear equations. Step 1. You are to expand the brackets and collect like terms. Whenever there is brackets, you know, Bodmer says always get rid of the brackets. What does get rid mean here? It means you expand by multiplying inside the brackets using the distributive property. So minus 4 multiplied by k, minus 4 multiplied by 2, and then the right-hand side will remain. So this will give me 3 minus 4k minus 8 equal to 3k plus 16. That's number 1. Number 2, you then group variables on the left-hand side of the equation and the constants on the right-hand side of the equation by adding the additive inverse on both sides. Now, I know that most of the time we are told that take it to the other side and it changes the sign. Really, it kind of means that it means one and the same thing, right? But mathematically, it's you taking the additive inverse on both sides. So if it was a plus 3 and you want it to be 0, it must be minus 3, right? Because I'm trying to get rid of it on one side and take it to the other side. So I must subtract 3 on both sides. So this one will therefore mean I have 3 there as I showed you, I have 16 there, I have minus 8 there. All of them must be on the right-hand side. So 16 is already on the right-hand side, so I'm not going to touch it, right? But my 3 must disappear on the left-hand side. For it to disappear, it means it must become 0. So I must add the additive inverse of 3, which is negative 3, and that's there, right? I must also add the additive inverse of minus 8, which will then be plus 8. But remember, in maths, we always say what you do on the left, you must also do on the right. Why is that the case? Because if you only do it on one side, it means you have already changed the question itself. It's no longer what the question was, right? But if you do it on both sides, you can always reverse it and it goes back to the original question. So I subtract 3 and I add 8 on the right-hand side. So the 3 and the 3 will be 0, minus 8 and 8 will be 0, and then 16 minus 3 plus the 8 there will give me 21. And then now I have 3k on the right-hand side. But remember, what did I say? Every variable must be on the left-hand side. So I must add the additive inverse of 3k on both sides. So this will be negative 7k equals to 21. And then you apply what we spoke about as well, the multiplicative inverse. So, by the way, let me just tell you something about the multiplicative inverse. The multiplicative inverse is to reverse whatever the operation was there. So if the operation is multiply, the multiplicative inverse will be to reverse the multiplication using what? Division, because they are the opposites. If you have a division sign between the terms, then the multiplicative inverse of that will be in the form of what? Multiplication, to reverse the division at all times. So, between the 7 and the k, I have a multiplication there. What does that mean? I must multiply this by negative 1 over 7. Remember I said you always say 1 over the number. But what you do on the left, you must also do on the right. 1 over 7. Or this is as good as you saying divide by minus 7, divide by minus 7. It really means one and the same thing. But I'm going to erase those so that then you don't see a lot of things on the board and you end up being confused. So if I simplify this, it is going to give me k alone. And then 21 divided by negative 7 will be the same as negative 3. And that will be my final answer there, right? So what does this mean? You multiply both sides of the equation by the multiplicative inverse of the coefficient, right? Of the variable. So as I said, that's negative 1 over 7. And you must also do it on the right-hand side. And then at the end, I will get k is equals to, let me write that properly. I will get k is equals to negative 3. Now, one of the beautiful things when it comes to equations is that you can always test your answer whether you are correct or not. By doing what? By substituting the variable that you got, right? If you find that the left-hand side is equals to the right-hand side, then it means your solution is correct. Because remember, the equal sign means that both sides have the same value at all times. So if I do that, it will be 3 minus 4 in brackets. Remember the value of k we said was minus 3 plus 2. And this will give me 3 minus 4 into minus 1, right? Which will at the end be 3 plus 4, which is equals to 7. Now, this gives me the left-hand side. I want to see whether the right-hand side will also be 7 or not. If it's not 7, then definitely what you did is incorrect. You must go back and relook at what you did. So this will be 3 into negative 3 plus 16. And then 3 multiplied by minus 3 will be minus 9 plus the 16 there. And if I work this out, then definitely I will get my answer as 7. So you can see that the left-hand side is equals to the right-hand side. So I can add one last step to my step 3. And that step will then be, after multiplying both sides of the equation by that and you are getting your answer and you are all well and done and you think you are okay with your answer, the last step will be substitute the answer, or rather the value, right, into the original equation. The original equation. And what this means is you must always get left-hand side equals to the right-hand side. And that's what will inform you whether your answer is correct or not. If it does not give you this, then it means your answer is a lie, right? And you need to go back and revisit what you did there. So that's what you always need to do. So I can name this as step 4, just for you to always know that you have got the correct answer at the end of your working out. All right, guys, that's it from me for now. I hope you have enjoyed everything that we've done thus far. But for now, I want us to take a quick ad break and refresh a bit, drink some water, make sure that you come back refreshed. But for now, please stay tuned. I'll be back just now.